Hi guys, I'm Ryan Euston and welcome to my fly tying channel. If you haven't already done so, consider hitting the subscribe button down below. That'll keep you up to date with everything as I upload it. My channel already contains hundreds of videos covering a wide range of both patterns and techniques, from the basic to the more advanced. So without delay, let's get on with the show. Hi guys, so today what we're going to tie is like a Firetiger jig fly. So in a previous video, if I'll try and put a link up above if we can into the info button, but I coated my jig head with epoxy just to give it a little bit of a fancier look, and I've chosen a gunmetal, but you can choose whatever color that you want to suit the flies you're tying. So this is probably about a 7 to 10 gram jig, but pick one that suits your own fishing needs. And I'm using a heavy gel spun thread. So what I'm going to do is put a bit of super glue onto the shank and wrap my gel spun into it, because I want to give it a base where it hopefully shouldn't twist or spin. So first things first, I'm going to use a 2mm gold holographic tinsel. Now this comes in hanks, so these are probably about 20 plus centimeters long, 25 centimeters maybe even. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 2 strands, and this will give me the core length of my fly and be the very tip of the tail. So I'm taking the 2 strands and I'm just going to take the 2 tips here and misalign them by a couple of centimeters. And then I will lay that back roughly across its middle onto the shank there, tie it forward and then fold it back, and that'll give me the 4 strands going back as the core. The fact that it is 2mm means it's less likely to tangle up, and also, as I said, it gives me a gauge for the final length of my fly there, which is around about 7 or 8 inches long probably. So having that in place, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to add a little bit of super glue just to secure it. So for the sort of hollow portion of this, what I'm going to do is use a chartreuse bucktail. And this will give us like an umbrella sort of shape in the center of the fly to support the general bulk of the fly without using a lot of materials. So I have a little bunch here. I'm going to reverse it and tie it in that it's pointing forwards, and then I'm going to fold it back on itself. So I'm just going to take my bunch there and I'm going to lay it on the side of the shank. As I push with my thumb, it starts to splay all around. I'll put on a couple of loose slaps of my tying thread, and then as I pull into it, you can see that it flares both at the front and at the back. If you want to be particularly neat, you could cut this off, but I think that these butt ends here help to strengthen and support the flare. I'm now going to take maybe an inch or so of my thread and put a bit of super glue onto it, and I'm going to wind that into my tie-ins. Hopefully that'll strengthen it, and then I'm just going to fold all this back. Now on the fly I'd have probably done that with a big straw, but it's quite difficult on this, so you just need to get used to sort of pushing it back with your fingers. Once it's in place, I'm going to super glue my thread, pull this forward. I'm just going to create a little dam up to the back of it there with my super glued thread, and that'll just hold that in place. So next I'm going to use more tinsel, and this is a mix of tinsel. Again, this is probably say 8 inches or so bunches, and I have a mix of like a pearly orange, there's flat green in it, olive, gold, copper itself, and there's a holographic green in it. And I'm just going to take the bunch and I'm going to lengthen it out a little bit so that it becomes tapered at both ends. And then I'm going to tie this out till it comes up a little bit shy of the length of the tail. So it's probably 80% of the length of the tail. As you can see, if I allow it to splay around the shank of the hook, the bucktail then starts to support it and kick it out at this end, but then the water pressure will pull it into a tip at the end, so it gives us that bait fish sort of a profile. So all these front pointing portions of it then, I'm just going to fold back, and because we didn't tie it in across its middle, these are shorter than this, so it gives us more bulk towards here and fining out towards the tips, and accentuates that bait fish sort of a shape or profile that we're trying to achieve. Once it's in place, I'm just going to let a little run of super glue around that doubled over portion and wrap into it, and again that will just help to hold that in place and prevent it from pulling out. So next we're going to put on some predator type fibre. So this is a mix of like a chartreuse, and I've mixed a glow in the dark one in through this here, so this will charge up with light and then aid the sort of glow of it and its visibility in coloured water, I suppose, or later on in the evening. So these bunches, as I pull the fibres out to mix it, it naturally misaligns the tips here. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to tie this on maybe about 60% rear, 40% towards the front. Allow it to splay around the shank. Put on some wraps in the middle of it. I'm just going to comb it into it a bit. Good tight wraps in the center. And then I'm going to take my super glue and I'm going to glue a couple of inches of my thread and wrap that into that tie-in point again to secure it. Secure it from slipping, but also secure it against teeth. And then we just need to fold all this back till it creates like a halo, and once we've done that we can then pull it all back. Tie in front of it, and again glue my thread, pull this back and create like a little thread dam in front of it, and that will hold that in position. We'll brush it out again. So next I'm going to use a bit of nihat. So this one is dyed in like a Kelly green or like a fluorescent chartreuse. So I've cut out my bunch. I'm going to hold it here about halfway along it, and I'm just going to pull, because this stuff here is just like wool and it adds nothing but bulk. Because it's so short, there'll be no movement in it, and it's also more likely to tangle, I think. So we place that bunch on, tie around it, same as we tied in the other stuff. Now it's not 100. If you don't have this, it's not necessary. Like, you could just go with the fiber stuff, but I think the tapered tips of natural materials like this just help to add to the sort of flow and sort of natural feel to the fly. Super glue our tie-ins there, and then flip all this back. Takes a bit of practice. Glue the thread, and again our little thread down. So we're nearly finished. To finish this fillet, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put on a couple of chartreuse grizzle feathers. Now remember, this fillet is going to fish this way up, so I'm going to flip it over just to see what that looks like. And I'm going to place one on each side. Now I'm placing them on at, I suppose it would be 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock if you were thinking of this as a clock face. And that sort of roofs the fillet, one either side of the hook. And tie back over the stalks of those, and a little bit of super glue just to stop them from pulling out. So to finish the fillet then, what we need to do is create a head, and I'm going to use this, which is like a fluorescent orange craft fur. I'm going to cut out a bunch of that. I'm going to hold it around about its middle, and I'm just going to pull out all this stuff here because that will just create bulk but no cover. And when I get my bunch, you can see I've sort of flattened it out a bit. That allows me to splay it around the bottom of the hook. I turn loose to start off with, then tighten it up. And then I need to repeat the process with another bunch for the top. And if you want to change and make like a two-tone head, then this is how you do it. You know, you change the color of the craft fur from top to bottom. Again, this one's a little bit more awkward, but just hold that in place. Okay, so we place the bunch on top, and this way, if we look at it, then it is kind of splayed and covered all around the head. If you think there's any bits that need a bit more cover, add smaller bunches just to pack it out. So I think we need another little bunch here. So repeat, stick it into the gap, tighten it on. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to just half hitch in behind that and cut it off. I'll flip the fly back over, and then I'm just going to carefully brush, because it's not fully fixed in place yet. I don't want to pull this out, but I do just want to even the craft fur out all around before I finish it off. So once it's in place, I'll then stroke all this back. I want to squeeze it this way just to make sure I have a nice flat head, and the reason for that is that it makes the eyes then easier to place. Once she's in place, I've got this sort of, I'm pulling it back, and that means all this is nicely folded back here at the tie-in, and then I just take my super glue and I go round, just letting it wick into that tied in portion. You need to hold for a little second. I tend to use like a watery kind of a super glue. Use this one here. To be honest, I find that pound store ones are far better. Whatever it is about them, they tend to dry very quickly and heat up almost. You can almost see them sealing it in position. And that is our fly tied. So we just need to finish the head on it. So super glue can react with your epoxies and stuff, so what I would suggest is that you probably set it aside. So I have other ones tied, so I will set this off to the side, but we can see that we have this nice Firetiger baitfish profiled jig fly. So I'll set that off up here to dry a little bit. And in Blue Peter style, I'll take one that I've tied before, place it back in. Now, so this was a slightly heavier jig on this one, but the principle is the same. So what we want to do is take my little post-it pads. I'll rip off the top one. cocktail stick and my 2-part epoxy. And I'm going to make up a little bit of just clear epoxy. So I'll mix those together on my little pad here. Mix and mix and mix. It'll sort of go a little bit milky-ish and then it'll start turning back to clear. So when you're happy with it, twirl it on your cocktail stick, set the fly up on its side and get a little bit of the epoxy there in a ball. Over the other side, same thing, lay down a little bit of it, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the cocktail stick to just dig it into the materials, hopefully to get it through that upper layer and allow it to bond it more to the core of the tying, and that will strengthen the whole construct up a bit. So once those two bits are in place, I'm going to put the eye in position. So I'm going to use these sort of, they're like a pearl orange eye, but choose whatever suits yourself. I like to just dig the back end of the eye in to get a little lip of epoxy on it, and I think that just makes it that bit stronger. And the same on this side. Slide those back, and then we need to wait for that to dry before we do anything else. So what you can do is clamp that in place. So you can use like these little hair clamp things, or this is like a garden tie for climbers or something like that. And just set that on, and as you can see, it'll just clamp the two eyes until that dries. So it's 5-minute epoxy, so it doesn't take too long, but for the purposes of the video, again, we have one already at that stage where I have the eyes stuck on, and we're going to finish the head on this one. So we're going to do a 2-colored head on this one. So we take our epoxy, has to be still runny, and just place it on the, which is the underside of the head, and allow it to join up to the bottom edge of the eyes. Then I'm going to roll it around the front so that it just catches a lip of the front of the eyes. And then same over the back of the head, top of the head, whatever you want to call it. And when you're happy with the cover of it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take, this is an orange glitter for the top, so I'm just going to pull the materials back, and that'll sort of smooth out the head, smooth the epoxy down, flip the fly over. This is the bottom of the fly, and I'm going to use a pearl here for the, what would be essentially the throat. And if our epoxy is still a little bit runny, what you'll see is that the glitter starts to sink into it, and it gives us a decent, smooth, sort of coated finish. If any bits are sticking where you don't want them, just wet your finger and just lightly dab it down. Now, don't lick epoxy because that's dangerous, but that's how we achieve a standard 2-part epoxy glittered head on the fly. So that is our Firetiger jig fly finished. So hopefully you like what you see. This is going to go onto a rotary fly dryer now, and just allow it to make the head even. But in the meantime, like what you see, give us a like, subscribe, tell your friends, and until next time, tight lines, and thanks for watching.